And they also plan to say, we have no evidence of cyber manipulation of election infrastructure intended to alter results. Here's the bottom line. What people need to know is Obama's intel community was about to give Obama a presidential daily brief that totally dismissed, downplayed, poo-pooed, choose your word, the notion that Russia had meaningfully interfered in the 2016 presidential election.
Fox News alert: the director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, releasing a bombshell report today that shows a conspiracy by a sitting president, Barack Obama, and his intel agencies to sabotage the president-elect, Donald Trump, brainwash the electorate, and undermine the
Once he stood as a beacon of inspiration. Today, however, a shadow lingers beneath the polished stage presence and carefully chosen phrases. As Megyn Kelly and Jesse Waters press further, the flawless facade starts to crumble from within. The shine of Netflix loses its luster, the podcast charm unravels, and the contradictions echo far more sharply than the compliments ever could. This isn't merely playful criticism, it's a moment of reckoning. The disguise is slipping away, and what emerges may completely rewrite what you believe to be real.
Assessment of January 17 was set to downplay Russian interference in the 2016 election. And then, after a meeting with Obama and the top intelligence community officials, or at Obama's direction at least, the intelligence community did a complete 180 and played up Russian.
Democrats spent the last 2 decades calling men toxic and shipping their jobs overseas, and now they're asking, where did all the men go? Obama's trying to save the party he destroyed, so he's on a manhunt. But there's one problem. The brothers don't listen to him anymore, so he's trying to transition boys into girls. Barack's got his own rules for men, but these are the rules that made men leave the party.
There was a time when Barack Obama's speeches were so smooth they could make butter seem coarse. Now he comes across less like a statesman and more like that class reunion guest still clinging to stories from his prime. Only this time the cheers have faded and the audience has thinned. It's as if he reached his high point at the prom and never left the gym, still repeating the same dance steps long after the music stopped, while the lights are off and the janitor is hinting that it's time to head home.
Michelle's outshining him. She's a big Netflix star, best-selling author. Now she's a fruit juice tycoon. And he's just left starved for attention. Just the way Michelle likes it.
We had your wife Michelle on the show, and she had mentioned that for about 10 years of the marriage, she really didn't like you.
Oh, man.
So asking for a friend, how do you get back in good graces? Again, for a friend. You got a pen, so I'll take a note.
Let me just say this. It sure helps to be out of the White House. And to have...
Megyn Kelly didn't need a moment to get started. Her reaction was an immediate, almost reflexive eye roll when word surfaced about Obama's newest Russia-related controversy. He's not exactly boiling yet, but the temperature is rising fast. The figure who once embodied hope and change now feels distant, almost blurred around the edges. Jesse Waters, meanwhile, leaned forward with the focus of a detective piecing together a mystery, mentally pinning red string between clues on an invisible corkboard. His look said everything. For the public, the weary disbelief at watching a former president slip from his pedestal was hardly a surprise anymore.
Let's go back to December of 2016. Barack Obama's president, but Trump has won and is going to be taking over as president in January. And they planned, the intel officials under Barack Obama planned, a lot of this is from Racket News, which everybody should read directly, Matt's group. Intel officials planned a December 9th, 2016 presidential daily brief, which is always from the intel community for the president, letting him know what's happening in the world. They planned a PDB that would say, foreign adversaries, quoting here, foreign adversaries did not use cyber attacks on election infrastructure to alter the U.S. presidential.
Let's be honest, the once unshakable Obama aura is cracking like brittle glass. He practically owned the idea of cool, yet now he's the political equivalent of a buggy Spotify playlist, annoying, repetitive, and popping back up when no one hit play. He swept into Martha's Vineyard as though still arriving on Air Force One. But these days he's coasting on a strange wave of questionable political endorsements, awkward press moments, and podcast soundbites so rehearsed they feel like AI-generated echoes from his old campaign speeches.
There is irrefutable evidence that detail how President Obama and his national security team directed the creation of an intelligence community assessment that they knew was false. They knew it would promote this contrived narrative that Russia interfered in the 2016 election to help President Trump win, selling it to the American people as though it were true. It wasn't.
Gabbard got her hands on a House Intel report that's been locked away in a...
Megyn wasted no time. She came in with the precision of a surgeon running on caffeine and intent. Dissecting Obama's post-presidency image felt like watching a glossy designer balloon meet the jagged edge of a rusty fork. Her first stop? The ever-stocked hypocrisy buffet, open around the clock and piled high with rules for you but not for me. There was a certain elegance to her ruthlessness. Irony seemed to seep from his very collar, whether in his calls to defend democracy while mingling with big tech moguls, or his warnings about climate change delivered in between lavish carbon-heavy getaways.
Just to be clear, earlier this week, I actually wrote this down. I rarely write down what I'm going to say, but I just didn't want to forget it because there's so many moving parts. We learned that intelligence community assessment of January 17 was set to downplay Russian interference in the 16 election. And then after a meeting with Obama and the top intelligence community officials, or at Obama's direction at least, the intelligence community did a complete 180 and played up Russian interference instead of...
Then came Jesse, oh Jesse, swooping in like a hawk spotting a self-assured ex-president wandering through a wide-open field of contradictions. Without so much as a pause, he rolled out a dossier of Obama's greatest hits. Remember the man who accepted a Nobel Peace Prize only to treat drone strikes like they were part of a video game? Jesse wasn't letting that one slide. He quipped that the Nobel Committee should have skipped the medal and just handed over a Best Multiplayer Killstreak certificate along with a joystick. What made it even more absurd was Obama's ongoing attempt to project the image of an ordinary citizen, right up until he's signing Netflix deals worth more than the GDP of small nations, pocketing $100,000 per speech, and hosting birthday parties grander than royal weddings. Sure, he's personable, but man of the people doesn't exactly fit when your guest list could crash the NASDAQ. Megyn didn't even need to elaborate. Her grin said it all. Of course, the scandals trailing from the 2016 election didn't make things any easier. You could practically hear the frantic grinding of Obama's PR machine, knowing that mere mention of that year sends shivers through today's political elite. Credibility vampires who flinch at the smell of truth like it's garlic. Suddenly, everyone suffers from selective amnesia, though the public memory remains perfectly intact. And if there's one thing Megyn and Jesse aren't known for, it's letting bygone controversies fade quietly. They're the type to show up at a smoldering campfire with a can of gasoline in one hand and a marshmallow stick in the other.
So Michelle didn't like Barack for 10 years? Well, join the club. We didn't like him for 8. So Michelle hated being first lady, always in the shadow of the president. But now she's in charge, and she's only letting Obama out of the house to do one thing: cry about Fox.
What about this country keeps you up at night?
The thing that I'm most worried about is the degree to which we now have a divided conversation. In part.
But the roast didn't stop with the mess of 2016. That was just the appetizer. What followed was a full 10-course feast, rich in arrogance and laced with biting satire. When the topic turned to Obama's legacy, the image was of a man endlessly polishing an old trophy, trying to make it shine like new. Megyn Kelly took aim at his crowning policy, pointing out how his administration managed to turn healthcare into a nationwide headache. Instead of delivering a cure-all, Obamacare left millions scratching their keycaps over what bronze, rose, silver, yen, and gold coverage actually meant. Obama still touts it as a medical revolution, but as Jesse put it, it was like slapping on a bandage and then charging for open-heart surgery. The border policies? They didn't magically appear in 2017. Their blueprint had been sitting on the shelf for years. Jesse wasn't about to let that fact vanish, and Megyn didn't miss her cue either. She reminded everyone that the media wasn't always just reporting on Obama. At times, it seemed they were moonlighting as his PR department. Scandal after scandal slid off him like water on Teflon, while lesser politicians were roasted alive for far smaller mistakes. From Fast and Furious to the IRS targeting scandal, all the way to Benghazi, these weren't random missteps. They were warning flares. Yet instead of answering tough questions, Obama seemed more focused on stacking the late-night talk show lineup in his favor, carefully shaping the news cycle from behind a smile.
Did you see the post he put out to celebrate her birthday?
Yeah.
Was it her birthday or their anniversary?
Yeah,
He chose the least attractive photo of her that's ever been released. I mean, this is
It's
just
not.
wrong. Michelle
Yeah,
Obama
he
can look
did
very
it.
nice in a photograph. This ain't it. She's got
Yeah,
the,
right.
the kerchief on her head. They're about 20 feet apart in this intimate dinner. And he looks great. This is classic, right? Like, he's like, this is a great picture. He's got the 1,000-watt smile.
And then there's his fixation on staying culturally relevant. Netflix documentaries, curated Spotify playlists, and interviews where he slips himself into the story at every turn. It's as if, after skimming one article about millennial trends, he decided to pivot from former president to full-time personal brand. For Jesse, the best commentary was simply letting the image speak for itself. Obama in aviator sunglasses dispensing life advice on a podcast. That visual alone kept audiences laughing for multiple segments. It's hard to take sermons on wealth inequality from someone dressed in custom-tailored outfits worth more than a semester of college tuition. Maybe he finds it inspiring. Maybe he still pictures himself as the main character. But for most people today, it all feels like a predictable dose of fan service. And who could forget that infamous portrait unveiling? Obama literally standing behind a giant painting of himself, radiating pride? Jesse spun it as a perfect plot twist in his comedic takedown. Only Obama could transform a formal government tradition into a polished lifestyle brand moment. It wasn't patriotism, it was equal parts performance art and ego salad.
More hot air from Barack because he couldn't care less about the environment. This weekend, the former president was in LA grabbing a bite to eat with his daughters, and obviously at a very trendy restaurant. While the Obamas dined on $20 sushi rolls, their SUV sat idling outside, just spewing pollution into the air. Idling for hours. Check out the video from the Daily Mail showing Barry just casually strolling out of the restaurant, not a care in the world, before jumping into the SUV. What happened? I thought Barry loved the environment. That doesn't look like a guy who cares about his footprint too much. And it certainly doesn't look like the guy.
Even his speeches now feel like political reruns. Still polished, yes, but beneath the gloss. It's the same reheated fare over and over. Hope, change, unity, it's the old trio on repeat. At this point, you could build an Obama speech generator and crank out lines fit for a TED Talk without breaking a sweat. Megyn joked about packaging them into fortune cookies for luxury beach cafes, each containing a grand-sounding but intentionally vague call to action that feels important, certs, until you realize it means absolutely nothing. Watching Obama navigate today's politics is like watching someone try to update their MySpace page in 2025. Jesse smirked. Outdated, pointless, and just plain awkward to witness. And then there's the foreign policy record. Jesse rattled off every nation featured in the Obama diplomacy special, complete with drone strikes that left more collateral damage than a bad pharmaceutical ad, slippery non-answers, and red lines drawn in invisible ink. The Nobel Peace Prize Committee, he added, is probably still wondering if they should be asking for their medal back.
Here he is alone at the Trump inauguration, which really was... It was stark. All these former presidents came in with their wives, and then there he was.
It was jarring.
All alone. It was jarring, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, just the spectacle of it all.
Gotta spend a minute on the Obamas, because there seems to be some momentum picking up in the rumor mill about their marriage. All right? I'm gonna bring you what I know.
Megyn burst out laughing at the sheer irony of Obama warning against misinformation, while flanked by Silicon Valley millionaires who could trade newspapers like baseball cards. It was, she said, like Dracula giving a lecture on blood pressure. Here was a man decrying echo chambers from the comfort of a lavish, data-stocked bunker. Naturally, Obama has kept his public image insulated from any truly uncomfortable questions. No grilling required, just selfies and a slow, dramatic walk across the tarmac. Jesse joked that maybe Volume 3 of Obama's post-presidency projects would be nothing more than his Spotify playlists annotated with mood notes. Track 5, listen to this as the drone hits Yemen, calm yet conflicted. Megyn, with a sly grin, closed the roast by pointing out that Obama remains the only former president who can make detachment look like a strength. But pull back the curtain and you don't find a wise statesman. You find a carefully curated celebrity. A man who can project gravitas without saying much at all. Nod solemnly while recycling old slogans, and age gracefully even as his past decisions sour like unrefrigerated yogurt. And somewhere in the background, the noise around Obamagate is only getting louder.
I thought, all right, let's see if maybe this is a way America can hear me at this moment. Go back to that day 10 years ago. What I think binds it together, all these different strands. A case upholding healthcare, a case declaring same-sex marriage, part of our constitutional protections of mourning. I think what pulls it all together is that no one person did any of that.
So he's sitting around on a June Thursday thinking about himself.
Jesse and Megyn and plenty of others aren't blind to what's going on. No matter how hard the mainstream tries to treat the subject like Voldemort in a press release, the whispers keep circulating. The connections, the private flights, the recurring names, they're all still there, lingering. No one struck the match yet, but the air already reeks of gasoline. Sure, Obama still has his devoted fans. His self-help style speeches and jazz-backed podcast musings could still fill theaters, just like his Netflix documentaries and curated Spotify playlists keep the brand alive. But as he's busy picking another playlist or drafting a lofty think piece to project depth, the world keeps recalling the realities he hoped eloquence would bury. Drone policies dressed in rhetoric, climate lectures delivered between luxury vacations, and healthcare fixes that left people more confused than before. Like milk left out too long, those once stirring statements have spoiled. What's left of his presidency now functions less as a legacy of leadership and more as an ongoing PR exercise, polishing the halo even as it starts to slip. The blueprint of his image is fraying, the contradictions louder than the applause, and the myth of perfection is being dismantled by the very people who once hailed him. Jesse and Megyn didn't just throw punches for entertainment, they exposed the stagecraft. The curtain came down, and behind it wasn't a monument to history, but a neatly arranged merchandise shelf of Obama memorabilia, waiting for one last inspection before the lights on the Obama Encore flicker out. It's not the ending of a legend, it's the slow fate of a brand that once seemed untouchable, now weighed down by the very truths it worked so hard to hide.